I never imagined the night would end like this. It began like so many others. I got home late from work, tired, distracted, and made myself a cup of tea. But something was off. My parents were unusually quiet, and there was this strange tension in the air. My mother kept glancing out the window toward the backyard, and my father was pacing. I tried to brush it off, but their body language made me uneasy. I sat down and asked how their day was. My father didn't answer. He just turned and walked toward the back door, and my mother followed him. They opened it quietly and slipped outside. Puzzled, I went to the window to see what was going on. In the dim porch light, I saw them carrying something, a long, dark, rectangular wooden box. It looked heavy. They walked side by side across the yard, heading for the riverbank behind our house. My heart started pounding. What were they doing? At the river's edge, they paused, looked around as if to check if anyone was watching, and then together, they heaved the box over the bank. There was a splintering thud and a splash, swallowed by the darkness. They just stood there for a moment, heads bowed, before walking slowly back to the house. I pressed my face against the glass. What was inside that box? My mind was racing. I waited until they were back inside. Then I slipped out the back door. The night was quiet. I crept to the riverbank and peered over the edge. The water churned slightly, but I couldn't see the box. I called out quietly, "Mom? Dad?" No answer. I listened, straining to hear anything over the sound of the water. At first, there was nothing. Then, faintly, a sound. A moan? A whisper? It came from somewhere near where the box had landed. I leaned forward. The box must have broken open. I scrambled down the muddy bank, my curiosity overriding my fear. I knelt at the water's edge and called out softly, "Hello?" The sound came again, a weak cough. I slid my hand into the cold water, groping around in the dark. I felt splintered wood, then something else. A hand? A soft whimper followed. My blood ran cold. I grasped hold of it and pulled. It was the lid of the box. The rest was deeper. I knew I needed help, but I couldn't go back in the water. I ran back to the house, shaking, soaked in mud and cold. I burst through the door. My parents were in the living room, acting as if nothing had happened. My father just looked at me and asked, "Why are you muddy?" I ignored him. "What did you throw in the river?" My voice was trembling. They exchanged a sharp, guilty look. Then my mother whispered, "You shouldn't have seen that." "What was in the box?" I demanded. She sighed and looked away. After a long, heavy silence, her voice cracked as she said, "Your sister." My world just stopped. My sister? She died years ago in an accident. We mourned her. We buried her. How could she have been in that box? My father stood up, his hands shaking. "She didn't die that day," he said, his voice low. "She was taken. We were afraid. We had to hide her to protect you." My mother turned to face me, her voice barely a whisper. "She's alive, but she's broken. When she came back, we couldn't have her here, not in that state." She swallowed hard. We decided it was safer to let her be lost. I couldn't speak. The room spun. My entire life, my memories, everything felt like a lie. They had hidden a daughter, my sister, who I thought was gone forever. They boxed her up and threw her into a river. The depth of their deception just cut right through me. And I knew, in that moment, that nothing would ever be the same again. They told me she was alive, that after the accident they found her, but she was broken, mentally fragile, severely injured. She wandered for years, unwell, unsafe. They gave her a small, remote shelter, but her condition worsened. They were terrified she'd hurt herself, or someone else. So, they made a plan. One night, they brought her here, drugged her just enough to be compliant, placed her inside that box, and tried to drown their guilt in the river. They swore it was temporary. They called it mercy. My voice broke. "You're monsters." My father's eyes welled up. My mother's face just crumpled. But I saw despair in their eyes too. I ran. I couldn't breathe in that room. I needed proof. I grabbed my phone, my fingers trembling as I keyed in 911. But I froze. I couldn't press call. Instead, I raced back to the riverbank. I had to find the box again. I had to know the truth. I slipped down the muddy bank, the night wind whispering around me. I reached into the cold water. My fingers brushed against something. I pulled, ribs of wood, with nails sticking out. Then, something else. A hand. Weak. Fragile. Alive? I recoiled, but then I heard it. A faint moan. "Help me," a voice whispered, so brittle it was almost lost to the water. I didn't know what to do. I let go. I ran. I was shaking, broken, but I had it. Confirmation. The impossible was real. When I stumbled back inside, my parents were waiting, quiet, as if they'd already resigned themselves to fate. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at them. My mother whispered, "She won't remember you." My father added, "We were giving her a chance at peace." I sat there in shock. My sister, alive all these years, hidden away. I had a choice to make: call the police, try to find her myself, or bury this secret and protect them. That night, sleep was a stranger. I just lay there replaying their words, the horror of the wooden box, the cold touch of the water, and that faint voice begging for help. I couldn't get the image of her hand slipping from mine out of my head. The next morning, I confronted them. I told them I was going to find her. They begged me not to, convinced that unraveling this thread would destroy our entire family. Their fear was raw, palpable. But I owed the truth to her, and to myself. I spent weeks digging through missing person records, hospital reports, anything I could find. They finally gave me an address, a remote, dilapidated farmhouse. The windows were shuttered. As I walked in, I found a small, dimly lit room. A figure was hunched in the corner. She looked up slowly, and as her eyes cleared, I gasped. It was her. My sister. She flinched when I got closer. I knelt and whispered, "It's me, your brother." She trembled, tears filling her eyes as she reached out a hand. I held her, and in that fragile hug, I felt years of brokenness, regret, love, and fear all colliding. She didn't fully recognize me, but there was a flicker, a deep memory in her eyes. "Why?" she whispered. Behind me, I heard footsteps. My parents stood in the doorway, their faces ashen. "We tried to save her," my father said. My mother just cried. "We couldn't let her suffer." I looked from them to my sister. My heart shattered. I told them, "You all deserve a chance, and the truth deserves a chance." We called the police. It was messy. They were arrested. An investigation began. Our darkest secret was out for the world to see. But in the process, she was rescued. She was taken to a hospital, stabilized, assessed. I visited her every single day. Her memory comes and goes in pieces, but she is alive. Now, months later, as I sit by her bedside holding her hand, I think about that night. The box, the river, the secret that tore our lives apart. I hate what my parents did, but I also see their twisted love, their fear, their desperation. They truly believed they were doing the right thing, and they failed. What they hid in that river wasn't just a body. It was a broken soul, a secret that refused to stay buried. If you ever feel you're carrying a burden too heavy, or a secret too dark, remember this: the truth has weight, but it also has power. And sometimes, the very thing that shocks us the most is what we need to finally begin to heal. Thanks for listening. If this story touched you, please consider following for more.